funny how life can seem like it's going smoothly, only to take a sharp turn when you least expect it. I'm Aaron Thompson, but everyone just calls me Ace. I used to think I had it all figured out. A successful career, a gorgeous wife, and friends who had my back. But it's wild how one night can shatter everything you thought you knew. That night, I was throwing a huge corporate party to celebrate landing a new client. I'd put months of work into the event, making sure every detail was just right. Sophia, my wife, was there beside me, looking as breathtaking as always. She's always been the one who lights up a room, the kind of woman who can walk in and instantly command attention. I used to admire that about her. Actually, I still did, back then. Our closest friends were there too, including my best friend since college, Leo, and his wife, Julia. We had spent so many weekends together over the years, traveling, going on vacations, and just being there for each other. I thought of Leo like a brother, someone I could trust completely. Little did I know how wrong I was. The party was in full swing, with drinks flowing and people laughing. Everything seemed perfect, but something felt off. Every time I glanced at Sophia, she was either laughing a little too loudly or getting a little too close to Leo. First, I brushed it off. Maybe I was just stressed from the event, or maybe the bourbon was messing with my head. But then, I started noticing things that really started to unsettle me. Sophia and Leo were exchanging these long, lingering looks, the kind that just didn't sit right with me. You know that feeling when something's just off? That's exactly what it was. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Ace, man, you all right? Ethan, a close friend who's also a psychologist, asked as he slapped me on the shoulder. I must have looked like I was a million miles away, because he stared at me like he was trying to read my mind. I forced a smile. Yeah, just got a lot going on, I said, brushing it off. But Ethan wasn't convinced. He shot me that look, the one he always gave when he wanted someone to open up. But I wasn't ready to talk about it, not yet. As the night wore on, I needed a break. I stepped out onto the balcony to take a call from a client. The cold night air hit my face, and for a second, I just stood there, trying to clear my head. But when I turned around to head back inside, that's when I saw them. Leo and Sophia, standing just beyond the glass door in the shadows. The way she touched his arm, the way they leaned into each other, it was like they were in their own little bubble. My stomach sank. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. But no, it was real. Leo was whispering something in her ear, and she smiled that same smile, the one she used to give me. It made me want to throw up. Anger surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I turned and walked away, my mind spinning, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. Back inside, the party was just a blur. I was shaking hands, nodding at people, but I wasn't really there. When Sophia came to find me later, acting like everything was normal, I tried to stay composed. But on the ride home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. You and Leo seemed pretty close tonight, I said, trying to sound casual even though my heart was hammering. Sophia barely looked at me, her eyes glued to her phone. Oh, don't start with your insecurities, Ace, she snapped. I'm exhausted. Can we not do this right now? That was it. She shut me down just like that. I knew Sophia could be cold, but this felt different. Something had changed between us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her. But I was too drained to push her any further at that moment. The next few days were hell. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid. But every time Sophia's phone buzzed and she slipped away to take a call, the knot in my stomach got tighter. She was working late more and more, claiming she had meetings that ran late. I wanted to trust her, but every instinct in me was screaming that something wasn't right. I called Ethan a few days later, needing someone to unload on. I told him about what I had seen on the balcony. He listened quietly for a while, not saying much. Then he sighed. Ace, I'm not saying you should jump to conclusions, he said carefully. But if you're feeling this way, maybe it's time to dig a little deeper before you confront her. Just get some clarity, all right? Clarity. I laughed bitterly. What am I supposed to do? Hire a PI or something? Ethan paused. I mean, If that's what it takes to get the truth. I tried to laugh it off, but his words stuck with me. Over the next week, I started paying closer attention. I noticed how Sophia's phone was always face down, or how she'd get these texts that made her smile, only to go silent when I walked in. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was becoming one of those paranoid husbands. But there was this voice in the back of my mind telling me, "You're not crazy. Something is off." I wasn't ready to confront her just yet, but I knew one thing for sure. If Sophia was hiding something, I was going to find out. And if I was wrong, well, I'd be ready to apologize. But in my gut, I knew. I just knew something was going on. You ever get that feeling where you just can't shake the pit in your stomach? That's how I felt after that night. Every time Sophia's phone buzzed, or she left the house with some vague excuse, I thought about that moment on the balcony with Leo. It haunted me, and I couldn't think about anything else. I tried to let it go, tried to convince myself I was overreacting. But the doubts were already planted, and they kept growing. I couldn't stop wondering, what was she really doing when she said she had late-night meetings or client dinners? That's when I finally decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed answers, real answers, not more vague excuses or half-hearted reassurances from Sophia. So one night, after she'd gone to sleep, I quietly grabbed her phone, hoping she hadn't switched the passcode. Luckily, she hadn't. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to stay calm as I installed tracking software. I kept telling myself I wasn't out of my mind. I just needed hard evidence, something concrete to prove what I was already starting to believe. The next few days felt like I was walking through a fog. I kept up appearances, plastering a smile on my face while my insides twisted with anxiety. I was constantly checking the software, scanning through her messages, tracking her movements. It didn't take long for my worst fears to be confirmed. I found out she was meeting Leo at a hotel, not once but several times, always under the guise of business meetings. The messages between them were beyond suspicious. Words like, "I miss you," and "can't wait to see you again," felt like each message was another stab to my gut. I couldn't take it any longer. I needed more than just text messages. I needed undeniable proof, something I could throw in her face. That's when I decided to hire Jack Foster, a private investigator Ethan had recommended. Jack was a straight shooter, no small talk. He didn't need to know every little detail, he just got the job done. A week later, he came back with photos. Clear, undeniable proof of Sophia and Leo meeting up in secret, all smiles and laughter, acting like nothing was wrong. They were wrapped up in each other, like a couple of teenagers sneaking around behind their parents' backs. I stared at those photos for hours. My blood boiled, and I couldn't think straight. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I couldn't just explode and confront her. Not yet. If I was going to confront her, I had to do it right. I needed to be calculated, smart about it. I had to hit back in a way that would hurt them just as much as they'd hurt me. During all this, Maya, my assistant, started to notice something was off. "Ace, are you all right?" she asked one afternoon, her concern genuine. Maya had always been a bit too friendly, always trying to find reasons to be near me, but her tone now felt different, like she was picking up on something more than just professional concern. "You've seemed distracted. Is everything okay?" I wanted to snap at her to mind her own business, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the loneliness, or maybe it was because I needed someone to talk to. So I told her just a little. I let her know I was dealing with some personal stuff. She listened, and when her hand rested on my shoulder, it lingered a little too long. "If you ever need someone to talk to, or anything else," she whispered, her voice taking on a soft, almost suggestive tone. I knew exactly what she meant, but I wasn't interested. Not now. Not with everything else falling apart around me. I wasn't going to add more complications to the mess I was already in. Then came the anonymous texts. "You don't know the half of it," the first one said. I had no idea who was sending them, but they knew a lot more than they should. The texts kept coming, dropping cryptic hints about Sophia and Leo's affair. At first, I thought it might be Maya trying to pry more out of me. But then I wondered, could it be Julia? Was she starting to figure things out about her own husband? I decided to test the waters. I invited Leo out for lunch. He showed up, all smiles, but I could see the tension in his face. I didn't waste time. "Leo, I know about you and Sophia," I said, keeping my voice level, my eyes locked onto his. For a split second, I saw his face go pale, but he quickly masked it. "You're losing it, Ace," he chuckled, shaking his head. "You've always been the paranoid one. Sophia and I are just friends." "Friends," I shot back. "Friends don't meet at hotels behind their spouses' backs." His color drained, but he stuck to his lie, calling me paranoid, telling me I was overreacting. I knew he was lying, but I didn't have the goods to break him just yet. I went straight to Ethan afterward, furious. "He's lying, Ethan. I know it, but I don't have enough to nail him." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "If you want to take them down, be patient. Gather everything. When you strike, make it count." That's when the idea hit me. I could use Julia. If she was already suspicious, I could push her closer to the truth. I arranged a lunch, making it sound like we were just discussing a business deal. It didn't take long for the conversation to shift. "Julia, I need to be honest with you," I said, watching her face closely. "I think something's going on between Sophia and Leo." Her expression darkened, and she went quiet for a moment before nodding. "I've suspected it for a while," she admitted, "but I never had proof. We decided to team up. She'd keep an eye on Leo, and I'd stay on top of Sophia. Together, we'd gather everything we needed to bring them down." Meanwhile, I leaned even more on Maya. She was eager to help, and she was good with tech. "I'll handle the digital stuff," she offered, a gleam in her eye. She started digging into Sophia's emails, calendar, and phone records. She even kept track of her movements. If I was going to expose this affair, I needed every piece of the puzzle. With Julia and Maya working together, I was ready to bring everything crashing down. I just had to wait for the perfect moment to strike. But the deeper I got into this, the more I realized this wasn't just about Sophia betraying me. It was about me taking back control, about making them regret ever thinking they could get away with this. If I had to burn everything to the ground, I was prepared to do it. Then, one day, I stumbled upon Sophia's old laptop buried in the back of our closet. She must have forgotten about it, assuming it was just another outdated device gathering dust. But to me, it was a goldmine. I could already feel my pulse quicken as I powered it up. To my surprise, it wasn't password protected. Typical Sophia, always so careless, thinking no one would ever question her. The first thing I did when I got my hands on Sophia's old laptop was dive straight into her emails. I was hoping to find something small, maybe a couple of flirty messages to confirm what I'd already suspected. But what I uncovered was much worse than I could have imagined. Sophia and Leo's correspondence stretched back years, over 2 fucking years. My heart hammered in my chest as I read email after email, each one more damning than the last. She had poured her heart out to him, telling him how suffocated she felt in our marriage, how he made her feel alive again. I couldn't pull myself away from the screen. Sophia had painted me as this cold, controlling husband who sucked the life out of her. She'd written things like, "I can't breathe around him, Leo, but with you I feel free." And Leo, he was all in, feeding her ego, telling her she deserved better, that he'd always be there for her. It was like swallowing shards of glass with every line I read. I needed to numb the rage that was building up inside me, but I didn't reach for whiskey. Instead, I called Julia. She had to see this. If I was going to take them down, I sure as hell wasn't going to do it alone. Julia arrived that evening, looking drained, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red-rimmed, probably from too many nights spent awake, wondering the same thing I was. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I shoved the laptop toward her. She gasped as she scrolled through the emails. 2 years, she whispered, her voice cracking. How could they do this to us? I watched her break down in front of me, but in that moment, I couldn't afford to feel sorry for her. I needed her to be angry, to want to destroy them as much as I did. "We can ruin them, Julia," I said, my voice low and steady. "But we have to be smart about it." She wiped her eyes and nodded, her face set with determination. I'm in. Let's take them down. From that point on, Julia became my closest ally. We were two people bound by the same betrayal, willing to do whatever it took to make them pay for everything. Jack Foster was already working for me, but now I pushed him harder. I told him to dig deeper, find bank statements, secret accounts, anything we could use to bring them to their knees. As the days passed, I found myself spending more and more time with Julia. What started as late-night strategy meetings, grabbing drinks after a long day of plotting, soon blurred into something else. We were two people wounded by the same knife, licking each other's wounds. It didn't take long for the lines to fade. One night, after too many glasses of wine, Julia leaned in, and before I even realized what was happening, we were kissing. It was messy, chaotic, and completely pointless. Or maybe not. For a second, I wondered if I was any better than Sophia. But then I remembered everything, the lies, the emails, the betrayal. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about desire. It was about control, about power, and about revenge. Julia understood that. We weren't lovers. We were partners in a twisted, dangerous game. But even as things escalated with Julia, I couldn't ignore Maya. She was relentless, pushing her way deeper into my life, pretending to be the supportive assistant when I knew she wanted more. And honestly, I was starting to see how useful she could be. Maya was sharp, ambitious, and willing to cross lines I hesitated to. When she managed to hack into Sophia's social media accounts, I almost laughed. Felt like Christmas morning. "Ace, you won't believe this," Maya said one evening, practically vibrating with excitement. "Sophia's been siphoning small amounts of money from her clients. It's not much individually, but over the years it adds up. This could destroy her career." I had to give it to Maya. She was ruthless. She didn't hesitate, and that made her the perfect ally. "Leak it," I told her. "But make sure it can't be traced back to us." She grinned, clearly thrilled by the chaos we were about to cause. Done. Now it was time for the grand finale. I planned a charity event, the perfect stage to publicly destroy both Sophia and Leo. I made sure they would both be there, under the guise of it being a regular social gathering for my agency. Sophia was all smiles, completely unaware of what I was about to do to her. The night of the event, everything was set up perfectly. Guests mingled, champagne flowed, and Sophia basked in the attention, thinking she had everyone fooled. Leo was there too, pretending like nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't been sneaking around with my wife for the last 2 years. I waited until the crowd was at its peak before making my move. The projector screen lit up, and at first, people thought it was just another part of the night's entertainment. But then the messages started appearing. Text after text, photo after photo. Everything laid bare for everyone to see. The room went silent. Then gasps filled the air as the truth sank in. Sophia's face went ashen, her eyes darting around, looking for a way to escape. Leo looked like he'd seen a ghost. Julia played her part flawlessly, storming out of the event in tears, making sure everyone knew just what kind of person Leo was. The fallout was instant. Within hours, Julia had filed for divorce, with a lawyer armed with everything we'd gathered. Leo was ruined. And Sophia? She was left with nothing. I filed for divorce that very night, making sure she'd be left with nothing. Not a cent to her name. It was over. Or at least it should have been. But as I stood there, watching Sophia's world collapse, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, there was a hollow emptiness inside me. A realization that maybe I'd lost a part of myself in all this. I left the party early that night. Julia had wanted to talk, to figure out if there was something real between us, but I wasn't in the mood. I couldn't handle it. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Maya. We did it, but even as I read it, the victory felt hollow. The taste of revenge was sharp, but somehow bitter at the same time. I couldn't shake the feeling that, in the end, I'd lost more than I'd gained. But it didn't matter. I had already committed. There was no turning back now. I'd burned every bridge, destroyed everything in my path. All that was left was the wreckage. The fallout from the charity event was more intense than I could have ever imagined. Sophia and Leo were blindsided by how their affair had been exposed, and the scandal spread through our circles like wildfire. They'd gone from being social darlings to pariahs overnight. People who used to praise Sophia's charm and Leo's business savvy were now backing away, eager to distance themselves from the mess. But instead of crumbling under the weight of the shame, they clung to each other like they were the victims, finding twisted comfort in their betrayal. Leo, true to form, wasted no time spinning the narrative. He started claiming that I was waging some sort of unhinged campaign of revenge against them. Seeing them try to salvage their image only made me angrier. The thought of them twisting the story to make themselves look like the wronged ones. It pissed me off more than anything. That's when Emily Collins came into the picture. She was a well-known journalist notorious for digging deep into high-profile scandals. She reached out to me, asking for my side of the story. At first, I wasn't sure. Emily was relentless, and I knew she'd dig until she got every detail. But I figured if I could control the narrative, it might make things even worse for Leo and Sophia. We met in a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. Emily was sharp, her questions cut straight to the heart of the matter. "Aaron, you've gone to great lengths to expose their affair. But why keep going? Isn't it enough that everyone knows the truth?" she asked, studying me with a look that felt like she was reading me. I leaned back in my chair, choosing my words carefully. People like Sophia and Leo think they can ruin other people's lives without paying the price, I said. I wanted them to feel what it's like to lose everything. Emily seemed intrigued, but I could tell she wasn't buying it all. She was digging for something deeper, something she could exploit. I knew I had to be careful with her. One wrong move and she'd have the spotlight on me. While Emily worked to uncover my motives, I decided to hit Leo where it hurt the most, his finances. I used my connections to leak rumors about financial trouble at his sports club. It didn't take long for James Reed, his business partner, to start sweating. Investors pulled out one by one, and soon enough, Leo was struggling to keep his business afloat. But as I focused on my revenge, things with Julia began to fall apart. The divorce was starting to weigh on her, and it was taking its toll. At first, she'd been all in, eager to take down Leo and Sophia with me. But I could see her beginning to crack. She was drinking more, and her mood swings were getting worse. One night, I went to check on her, and she was a wreck. "Ace, what have we done?" she slurred, her eyes red-rimmed. "I thought this was supposed to make us feel better, but I just feel empty." I tried to calm her down, but honestly, I was starting to get tired of her emotional baggage. This was supposed to be about revenge, not babysitting her through breakdowns. But I couldn't afford to cut her loose yet. Not when she was still useful to me. That's when Maya made her move. She'd been watching from the sidelines, waiting for her chance. With Julia falling apart, Maya swooped in to take her place. She was sharp, ambitious, and relentless. Exactly what I needed in this fight. She saw through the surface, understanding that I wasn't just exposing Sophia. I was after blood. "Ace, we've done enough damage to Leo," Maya said one night in my office, her eyes glinting with a hunger I recognized. But Sophia's still standing. "I found something that could ruin her for good." I was interested but cautious. "What did you find?" I asked, leaning forward. Maya's lips curled into a confident smile. "Sophia's been embezzling from her clients, overcharging them, pocketing the difference. We could use this to completely destroy her reputation, maybe even put her in jail." My first instinct was to hesitate. Sure, I wanted Sophia gone, but I was starting to wonder just how far I was willing to take this. But Maya, sensing my moment of doubt, leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a seductive whisper. "Ace, after everything she did to you, are you really going to let her walk away? She tore your life apart. Now it's your turn to finish what you started." She was right. Sophia had humiliated me, destroyed everything I had. I couldn't stop now, not when I was this close to finishing what I'd started. "Do it," I said, my voice cold and final. "Leak whatever you found. Make sure it's untraceable." Maya's eyes lit up with triumph. She was hungry for this, And honestly, I needed someone like her. With Jack Foster back on the job, we dug deeper into Sophia's financial dealings. What we uncovered was worse than I had ever imagined. Sophia wasn't just skimming off the top. She was deep in fraud, her entire business built on lies and theft. The evidence was overwhelming, enough to bring her down for good. But as Maya and I worked to gather everything, I started to feel a strange emptiness creeping in. I was so caught up in destroying them that I hadn't stopped to think about what this was doing to me. But there was no turning back. Maya was relentless, and maybe she was right. Maybe the only way to find peace was to burn it all to the ground. In the end, it wasn't about seeking revenge anymore. It was about ensuring that Sophia and Leo would never have a moment of peace, not ever again. I had made up my mind. I would strip them of everything that mattered to them, even if it meant losing the last vestiges of my own humanity in the process. By then, my life had devolved into an endless cycle of planning, executing, and watching the destruction unfold. It became an addiction. Every blow I landed on Sophia and Leo, every piece of their world I knocked down, gave me a high, a rush of control that I couldn't get anywhere else. But as the days went on, my obsession with them began to erode everything else in my life. I was barely sleeping. Every night, I found myself buried in a pile of emails, financial documents, anything that might give me an advantage in this war. I was convinced that until I utterly destroyed them, I wouldn't feel like I had won, like I could rest. But in the meantime, my business was crumbling. Oliver Brooks, my partner, wasn't blind to it. "Ace, we're losing clients," he said one morning, his frustration clear. "Isabel Ford is on the verge of pulling out unless you show her you're fully committed. You're losing your focus." Isabel Ford was one of our biggest clients, a fashion mogul whose account brought in millions. But I couldn't care less. My mind was consumed by Sophia and Leo, their every move, their every attempt to rewrite the narrative. "I'll take care of it," I muttered, brushing him off. But even I could tell I wasn't convincing either of us. Oliver didn't look reassured, and frankly, neither was I. This obsession had taken over. I had become so fixated on destroying them that I didn't even realize the other fires around me were about to burn out of control. That's when Detective Dylan Pierce made his entrance. I was in the middle of another sleepless night when my phone rang. "Mr. Thompson, this is Detective Pierce. We need to talk," came his voice, firm and unyielding. He didn't waste time. "Sophia has filed a harassment complaint. She says you've been stalking her." For a moment, I couldn't even respond. Sophia, once again playing the victim, casting herself as the poor soul in all of this. I could practically hear her smug laugh as she signed that complaint. "This is a load of crap," I shot back, my voice seething with anger. "I've been gathering evidence or stalking?" Pierce interrupted, his tone harsh. "You'd better be careful, Mr. Thompson. If you cross the line, I'll make sure you face the consequences." The second the call ended, I smashed my fist into the wall. Sophia was trying to turn the tables on me, and somehow it was working. But I wasn't finished. If she thought a police report would slow me down, she clearly didn't know who she was dealing with. Through all of this, Maya just wouldn't stay out of my life. She was relentless, always in my ear, pushing for us to finish what we started, to make sure Sophia and Leo were completely obliterated. But she wasn't just focused on that anymore. "Ace, we're a good team," she said one night as we worked through yet another pile of Sophia's stolen emails. "We could take this further. Beyond revenge." I knew exactly where she was going with that. The way she leaned in a little too close, the way her hand brushed my shoulder, it wasn't subtle. But I wasn't interested in that. Not with Maya, not while Julia's shadow was still hanging over me. Maya was ruthless and smart, and at that point, she was exactly what I needed. But deep down, I knew letting her get closer could end up being a mistake. As I was trying to navigate my relationship with Maya, Julia was slipping away. The drinking was getting worse, and the resentment between us was building. I didn't realize how much damage had been done until one day. She came to my place, her eyes wild and glassy. "I went to see Sophia," she blurted out, swaying a little as she stood there. My stomach dropped. "You what?" "I needed to know, Ace. She almost shouted, her words slurring. I wanted to know why she did it, why she went with Leo. And you know what she told me? That I'm just a pawn to you. That you're using me for your sick revenge. Sophia, ever the manipulator, had poisoned Julia's mind. Julia's face was flushed with anger and betrayal. You're no different than them, she spat, her voice trembling. All you care about is destroying their lives. And now I'm caught in the middle. I can't do this anymore, Ace. If you don't stop, I'll go to the police. I swear I will. That was the moment I realized I'd pushed Julia too far. She was a loose cannon now. If she went to Detective Pierce, everything I had worked for would come crashing down. I tried to calm her, tried to remind her of what they had done to both of us. But it was too late. Julia had made up her mind. As if things weren't bad enough, I started receiving anonymous tips. Cryptic emails, warning me that someone was digging into my past. At first, I thought it was Julia trying to sabotage me, but it could just as easily have been Leo or Sophia retaliating now that they knew I was behind their financial disaster. Panicked, I turned to Maya. We need to act first, she urged. Emily Collins has been sniffing around, looking for more dirt on Sophia. Let's give her a story that will crush them once and for all. I agreed, but there was one condition. It has to be airtight, Maya. No mistakes. If we do this, it has to be flawless. I met Emily again, offering her the scoop that would destroy Sophia's life. You want the full story? I've got something that'll blow this whole thing wide open, I told her, sliding a file of damning evidence across the table. But Emily wasn't satisfied with just the financial crimes. She leaned forward, her eyes piercing. Why, Ace? Why go to all these lengths? What did they do to you that made this unforgivable? I could feel her probing, trying to crack the shell I had built around myself. I kept my responses vague, deflecting back to Sophia and Leo. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was getting too close. She was piecing together things about me, things I had fought so hard to keep hidden. As I prepared to release the final evidence, another anonymous message came through. This one was blunt and chilling. Be careful, Thompson. The past always catches up. My paranoia spiked. Someone was watching, waiting for me to slip. Now I was cornered. Julia was ticking time bomb. Maya was growing more reckless by the minute, and Emily was circling, ready to tear down not just Sophia, but me as well. And with Leo and Sophia gearing up for their own retaliation, it felt like the walls were closing in fast. But I couldn't stop now. I was already too far gone. If I was going to crash and burn, I was damn sure going to drag everyone down with me. Everything was set. I was one move away from finally finishing this twisted game. The last bit of evidence against Sophia was ready to go. Emails, bank records, proof of her embezzlement. This was it, the knockout punch. But just as I was about to hit send, the whole thing fell apart. I received an email from an unknown sender. It was a series of messages between Maya and Leo. At first, I thought it was a sick joke. But as I read on, reality set in like a gut punch. Maya, the one person I trusted above all, had been playing both sides the entire time. She'd been feeding Leo details about my plans, all for a payday. A nice fat payout to secure her future once everything hit the fan. The rage hit me like a tidal wave. I stormed into my office, where Maya was sitting there like nothing was wrong, completely calm. You thought I wouldn't find out? I spat, slamming the printed emails down on her desk. Maya didn't even blink. She looked up at me with that same cold, confident smile. Ace, did you really think you could trust me? She said with a laugh. I was never in this for you. I was in it for me. You were just a stepping stone. I wanted to choke the life out of her right then and there, but all I could do was ball my fists, my nails digging into my palms. You're done here, I said through gritted teeth. Pack your shit and get the hell out. But Maya had already planned her escape. As I watched her leave, my phone started blowing up. News alerts, client emails, messages from Oliver Brooks. It was chaos. Maya had leaked sensitive information about my company to the press. Rumors about financial instability were spreading like wildfire, and Isabel Ford, my biggest client, was pulling out. Ace, what the hell is going on? Oliver's voice crackled through the phone, panic in his tone. We're losing clients left and right. I can't keep up with this. It's falling apart. And just like that, Oliver, my last remaining ally, cut ties with me. My business was crumbling before my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But it didn't stop there. Julia's betrayal was the final blow. I should have known better than to trust her, especially after everything I'd put her through. Detective Dylan Pierce called me in for questioning. "We have proof you've been using illegal surveillance to spy on your wife," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. I tried to deny it, but they had everything. Digital evidence, anonymous tips, and Julia's damning testimony. I was facing criminal charges, and the walls were closing in around me faster than I could breathe. Meanwhile, Sophia and Leo filed a lawsuit for defamation, claiming that my campaign of revenge had wrecked their reputations and businesses. My lawyers told me to settle, but the damages were more than I could ever cover. Then came Emily Collins's final strike. The article she wrote was a masterclass in character assassination. It laid bare every detail of my descent into madness. My obsession, my manipulations, the destruction I'd left in my wake. The public ate it up. In an instant, I went from being someone to being a social pariah, the subject of tabloid gossip and viral memes. I was finished. With my business in ruins, Julia gone, and Maya off with her payout, I was left with nothing. I spent my days in the empty house Sophia and I had shared, wandering through the rooms that now felt like a tomb. I tried calling Julia, but she had blocked my number. She wanted nothing to do with me. Even Jack Foster, the private investigator I had relied on, had distanced himself. But one evening he showed up unannounced. "Ace," Jack said, his voice softer than usual, almost pitying. "I've seen a lot of guys consumed by revenge, but you went further than anyone I've ever seen. Was it worth it? You lost everything, man." I didn't have an answer. I just stared at the empty whiskey bottle in my hand, trying to make sense of how it had all gone so wrong. Jack left, shaking his head. I was alone again, surrounded by nothing but the ghosts of my own mistakes. Then, late one night, I got another email. The subject line simply read, "A happy ending after all?" My hands trembled as I opened it. The email contained a single photo, Sophia and Leo, laughing together on some sun-drenched beach, looking like they were living their best lives. Below the photo, one line of text. "In the end, was it worth it?" I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, the words searing into my mind. I had destroyed everything, all in the name of revenge, but they had moved on. They were happy, and I was left with nothing but the wreckage of the life I had burned down. I wanted to reply, to scream, to throw my laptop across the room. But all I could do was laugh. Quietly at first, then louder, until the sound echoed through the empty house. It was a bitter laugh, hollow, the kind of laugh you hear from someone who has lost everything. In the end, I hadn't won anything. No closure, no peace, no satisfaction. Just the cold, brutal truth that I had become the very thing I had hated. And the only one left to blame was me.